and then we go to Floriana. Floriana. Have you been to Floriana?
Yes.
When?
This morning.
Today. I mean, if you forget that, we have a problem. Floriana has about 180 people. Look at Floriana. It's a huge island for just 180 people. Everybody knows everybody. You cannot be naughty on Floriana. They'll find out. I've tried. Yeah. Years ago, I went to Floriana and I rented a room and a little apartment. And one day my neighbor comes to me and says, Ramiro, why did you come home yesterday at 4 in the morning? There's nothing open at 4. Where were you? And I said, what were you doing up at 4 in the morning? He was waiting for me. So these are the islands that have humans. Big population. Did you all know we had so many humans before you came to Galapagos? Probably not, because you know what? We don't advertise humans. In documentaries, we show you the iguanas, we show you the tourists. We never show you the schools, we never show you the children of Galapagos, we never show you the markets, we never show you the agricultural area, but there's lots of humans, and here they are here to stay. We people born in Galapagos, we call ourselves Galápaguños in English, or Galápagueños in Spanish, yeah? This is another island that has humans, but they come and go. So it's not a really stable population. They're not always the same people. Have you been to that island? Yes, that is Baltra, the airport island. Baltra is a military base for the government of Ecuador, Air Force, and also a naval base, yeah? Really? But it wasn't always that case. We actually used to be run by the United States of America. Who here comes from the U.S.? Show me with your hands. Minority. Good, I can speak freely. We love America. We love the U.S. and all of your presidents. Past president-elected ones. Anyway, so Americans were here in Galapagos. Over 3,000 people, 3,000 soldiers. At first, the U.S. wanted to buy the island. They said, Ecuador, send us your island. Do you know what we said? No way. Ecuador and sovereign. Then they came back a third time. They said, second time, Ecuador, rent us your island. Do you know what we said?
Yes.
What? Yes. No, of course no. We said, no way. Then they came back a third time and they said, Ecuador, give us your island. I said, okay. We would never say 3 times no to the U.S. So we lent the island of Baltra. They built a base. And Baltra was a strategic base to protect the Panama Canal during Second World War, in case the Japanese were to attack it. So Galapagos had a very important American base, and they were all over the place. Why do I bring Americans into the human history of Galapagos? Well, because they had a lot of contact with people from Santa Cruz. If you look on the map, they're right next to each other. So they always came over to Santa Cruz. We always went over to Baltra. They also went to San Cristobal. So some of the first fishing boats we got on my island came from the Americans. Some of the first schools on my island were started with American money. Some of the first children also from my island came from the Americans. That's why if you go into town, there's going to be lots of tall, blonde, blue-eyed Galápaguños. We know how that happened. They weren't the first, though. We actually believe that it was the Spanish who discovered us by chance. 1535, a priest was supposed to go to Peru, from Panama to Peru, but the winds brought him to Galapagos. Of course, whenever you get lost, you want to know where you are. You're going to find food and water, perhaps. So he explored the islands a little bit, and then he manages to get to Peru. And once in Peru, he writes the Kingdom of Spain. He says, my king, I discovered new land. What do I do with it? The king writes back, and he says, is there any gold? He says, no gold, just the ugliest animals I have ever seen. Marine iguanas, I suspect. So, Spain said, no, we're not interested in those Galapagos Islands. Stay in Peru, carry out your mission. They knew we existed. We weren't important enough for many countries, right? But this priest was actually fascinated by what he had seen, so he started making maps, writing, and saying, in Floriana, there's fresh water. So people automatically coming to Galapagos said, let's make sure we go to Floriana because there's fresh water. On San Cristobal, there were giant tortoises, and you can eat them. So people were going to San Cristobal whenever they needed food. And that's actually what started pirates and buccaneers. era. They started coming in the 1500s. They weren't so good for Galapagos though. Pirates and buccaneers were the worst. They brought ants. Maybe some of you were bitten yesterday. They brought rats on their ships. Yeah, that's how the rats got here. Remember at the breeding center, the guides told you they had to close the baby corrals because of the rats? That's because of that. They brought goats to Galapagos. Yeah, and they are responsible for killing so many giant tortoises and taking them on their ships. Remember, yesterday was Tortoise Day, right? Your guides must have told you this. I know for a fact. How many tortoises do we have left alive now, according to the last census? 6,000. Who was your guide yesterday? Please give me a name. I need to send at least one to retraining. According to the scientist, alive now left 60,000 tortoises. Yeah? According to the same scientist, they said the Galapagos probably had an estimated population of 250 to 300,000 tortoises. According to the logs of the pirates and whalers, they took and or killed over 100,000. They almost cut them by half in just a couple hundred years. So not such a nice part of the history of Galapagos, but part of the history nonetheless. And then of course you were here today, remember? Post Office Bay, some of you went there. Whalers lived in Galapagos, 1700s. Americans, all over the place. British, any British here? Yay! Yeah? We even had a Norwegian colony. Anybody from Norway? No? Yes? You can probably claim part of Floriana. We had Swedish people living in Galapagos. We had French people living in Galapagos, 1700s. How many Ecuadorians do you think we had in Galapagos? Zero. Most people think we started this whole thing. We didn't. It was the foreigners. It was the Germans. It was the Americans. It was the British. Foreigners came to Galapagos. We actually didn't come into the picture until 1832, and that is when Ecuador took possession of Galapagos. Yeah. Remember, this your guides would have told you also. We became free from Spain in what year? 1822. Then quickly, as soon as we broke from Spain, we joined other free countries and we formed a block of nations, and we used to call ourselves the Great Colombia. Remember from school? Did you study us in school like we study you guys? No? Okay, because we study all of your countries. That's why if you look at the flag of Ecuador, Venezuela, and Colombia, we still share the same flag. Minor changes, but that used to be the Union flag. And then in 1830, we became what we call the Republic of Ecuador. 2 years after, we took over Galapagos. Brand new country. All of our friends, they said, Ecuador, don't be stupid. Don't take over those islands. Nobody wants them. Why would you do that? Just leave them there. Ecuador said, no, it's okay. We'll take Galapagos for us. And we did. Since 1832, we have been the owners of Galapagos. Little tiny problem, after we took possession, many countries have wanted Galapagos from us. In the 90s, we fought a war with the South American countries, and one of the items on the table to stop the war was give us Galapagos. And then, of course, we won. I don't even know how we won, but we won. Also, other countries have wanted Galapagos from us. In the mid-1990s, government of a country, I'm not going to say which, but it is represented in this room. They made an unofficial request to the government of Ecuador. And they said that Galapagos would be a nice payment because we owe this country a lot of a lot of money. But of course, the government would never agree, nor would its citizens. Little tiny problem. 0 Ecuadorians living in Galapagos. Foreigners everywhere. And we were afraid that some of these countries could claim Galapagos for them because they had representation, yeah? Any of my British friends, have you ever heard of the Falkland Islands? Little tiny problem between Argentina and the UK. I'm going to call them also Las Malvinas for my personal safety on board, because we are in South America and I have other South Americans here. So Ecuador didn't want to have that. And we said, we need to get Ecuadorians to Galapagos. So we went and we advertised. We said, who would like to move to Galapagos? Nobody. You know what? We offer to pay people. Remember the farm you were at yesterday? We said to people, take any land you want. You want an island? We give you an island. Just move to Galapagos with your family. We gave people anything they wanted just so they would move to Galapagos. Yeah? You know how many people accepted at the beginning? 0. The only way we could get Ecuadorians to come to Galapagos is follow a whole bunch of them, go behind them in Ecuador, hit them in the head with a lava rock, put a bag over their heads, put them on a ship, sail to Galapagos, and kick them out and sail really quickly back to Ecuador before they could swim behind us. And that we did. That is how we brought Ecuadorians to Galapagos. We forced them. No Ecuadorian wanted to come willingly. Who were the only Ecuadorians we could force? Prisoners. Anybody from Australia? You know. My great-grandfather from the colony, but he didn't do it. Ahmad says he didn't do it. The other guy he was accused of stabbing, he just tripped and fell 18 times on that night, which could happen, yeah? So we had a couple of penal colonies. They didn't work out. At the very end, the least dangerous people did stay in Galapagos, and that is how the Ecuadorian population started. We weren't the first. We were towards the last people that came in. We had to be forced to come to this territory in Ecuador. Charles Darwin also came through Galapagos, 1835. He came when humans were around. He does deserve another talk on his own, which we will have. But he did stop here in Galapagos. And then we're going to go to Floriana. Yeah, Floriana, 1929, the story of 2 Germans. The name of the guy is Frederick Ritter. And the name of the lady is Dora Strauch, but from now on I'm going to call them the Ritter family. They were married in Germany, just not to each other. They abandoned their spouses and they fled together to Galapagos to start a new life. Yeah? They were friends in Germany, and Dr. Ritter was a dentist by profession, but he was a thinker, a philosopher, and he had just read a book on the Galapagos Islands that somebody had written. Yeah? And then he was convinced that if humans lived in complete isolation like the giant tortoises, and if humans were vegetarians like the tortoises, they could also live to be 200 years like the tortoise. He was a little, how do you say in English, he was missing a French fry from his Happy Meal. But Dora liked his ideas and she followed him, and they came to Galapagos to start a new life. Very famous. That's a picture of Frederick, and that's a picture of Dora right there. The doctor was a little bit odd, I have to say, because before coming to Galapagos, he pulled all of his teeth out. He came without teeth. Yeah, because he didn't want to have problems with cavities, he said, and he was bringing no tools from Germany, and he forced Dora to let him pull her teeth out too. Yeah? And Dora accepted. Can you imagine? She said, no, if you come with me, you have to come also without teeth. Yes, that's why you don't see them smiling that much, because they don't have much to show. Famous. They were famous. Every ship that came to Galapagos had to go to Floriana. They had to go see the Ritters. These people, what's going on. They made a movie about them, and I'll show you a couple of clips in a little while. So they were more or less happy. The only thing is Dora realized that her husband did want to be in isolation, away from people and everything, but she thought that that would include her, which did. In her book, Dora writes that she was lonely and depressed because her husband wanted nothing to do with her on Floriana. Can you imagine being 2 people on an island and the other person just leaves you for days? And that's what happened. So every time they had visitors, Dora was so happy. Later, a couple years after, another family came to Floriana, the Whitmers. Have you ever seen that last name? Whitmers. Really, yesterday we saw it, if you were paying attention. When we were in the bay, there was a ship called the Tip Top. On the side, it said Rolf Whitmer Turismo. That's one of their ships, yeah? This is another family. The father, called Heinz. The mother, Margaret. The boy, his son, her stepson, Harry. And the baby in arms, Rolf. Yeah, and later they had another daughter, Floriana, like the island. Rolf was the first born Galápaguños of Floriana. The first true citizen born on Galapagos soil was 100% German. He wasn't even Ecuadorian. Most of our first citizens were Norwegians, German, American. Yeah, not Ecuadorian. That's why, actually, if you look at the culture from Galapagos, we're a little bit confused because we take a little bit from the Germans, a little bit from the Americans. If you go to Ecuador, you go to the mountains, you hear the music, the way they dress, the food. You go to the coast, everything's flowers and colorful. You go to the Amazon, the same. Galapagos, the other region, we take a little bit from everyone. I remember when I was young, we had some friends who came over and they said, "Oh, Ramiro, we want you to cook us something traditionally Galápaguñan." Yes, so I made them goulash. And now that I live in Germany, they also make Galapagos food in Europe. They make goulash as well. So the Widmers came to stay. Margaret had read about the Richters. And she said, "Honey, we need to do that too. Let's go to Galapagos." Heinz said, "Okay, fine, let's go, but let's not go to Floriana. Let's go to another island. Floriana already is too crowded. Too many people." Margaret said, no, we gotta go to Floriana because remember, I'm pregnant. And if I have problems giving birth, I read there's a doctor on the island. Little did she know. So that's why they came to Floriana. The Richters were not happy because who is happy when somebody else comes to their island, right? So they started fighting at the beginning, but at the end they said, "You know what, Floriana is big enough for two families. You guys live on this side, we live on the other side. As long as we never see each other, we'll be okay." And so they did. So there was peace for a while until a third group of people came the year after, and the peace ended. And that was this lady that came accompanied not by one, not by two, but by three lovers. Two from Germany and one from Ecuador. She picked up a little souvenir in Ecuador. And she was called Eloise von Wagner. And when she came to Galapagos, she proclaimed herself the Baroness of Galapagos. She gave herself a royal title. And sometimes she forgot and she said, no, I'm the Empress of Galapagos. So she's known by both names. She was always loved the attention, always surrounded by men. The other two families stopped fighting one another and they started ganging up on her because they wanted her gone. She came to steal property that belonged already to the other families. Her house, some of you went kayaking, right? Remember the little lighthouse? That's where her house was. And she chose that because she could see ships coming to post office. And every time ships came to leave presents for the other families, she would send one of the men to row the boat and collect those presents and bring them to her. And then when the families came to check the mailbox, there was nothing for them because the Baroness had always gotten them first. Yeah. And here's a little video of the Baroness, if you want to see it, shot by an American who was actually documenting human life here in Galapagos. That is her, Eloise von Wagner. Supposedly she came to build a hotel for rich people. That was the idea. So that's why she started taking up property that didn't belong to her on Floriana. And one of her German boyfriends was the money guy. Supposedly he was the one that was going to fund the project. That's one of them, aka Tarzan. But again, nobody liked the Baroness. Everybody wanted her gone, including her boyfriends. The boyfriends always complained that the Baroness was very physical, and whenever she got drunk, she would physically abuse them. She would hit them. And people say, "What do you mean? You guys are big guys. This little lady, what do you mean she hits you?" They often said that she would even shoot at them whenever she got drunk. So they had to run away from their own house. As you can see, she's a little bit, probably ran out of coffee and she's a little bit bothered. According to them, she would physically punish them. 3 men couldn't against a woman. One of the reasons why people kind of were a little bit afraid of the Baroness is because she brought weapons to Floriana. In her luggage, she brought a crate of guns and rifles. So she was always either wearing a revolver or carrying a rifle. And that's how she threatened the families into doing her bidding. She was a little too happy. So the families wanted her gone. The Richters, the Widmers, not only because of what she was doing, but because she was always flirting with their husbands, they said. They both wrote books. Yeah, and they said that the Baroness would always go to the beach because she knew the men went jogging at 6 in the morning. So she would always go to the beach at 6 to walk and ride her horse wearing nothing but her boots, completely naked, so the men would see her. And they always ran into each other, and she always asked them for help to get on the horse because it's hard on the sand, right? So the wives couldn't stand that. They said that she does it on purpose, just to get a reaction out of them. They said, she's got to go. Baroness has to go. Remember, she had 3 boyfriends, right? 2 from Germany, 1 from? As soon as the Ecuadorian sees danger, he says, no, I'm not staying here. Something's going to happen. So he takes a ship and goes to Ecuador. Yeah? We Ecuadorians, when it comes to danger, we are, what's the word I'm looking for? Who said chickens? No. We are cautious. We see danger and we run away from it. We don't ask, excuse me, why are you shooting? We go. A couple of years ago, I was with my German host brothers in Quito. Maybe you were there in Old Town. 8:30 p.m. We're walking, and I see 2 guys running in the opposite direction. So I took off running. And my 2 German brothers said, Ramiro, why are you running? I said, I don't know, run with me. I'm not going to stop and ask why they're running. They're running from something. They have good reason. So the Ecuadorian's gone. He lived a very full life in Ecuador. One of the Germans that stayed was found dead on an island called Marchena. The other one went missing with the Baroness. No idea where the Baroness is. Even now, we have no idea. That's why Floriana is called the Mystery Island. Police came and checked. They asked. They investigated. Nobody knew nothing. The Baroness was simply vanished from Floriana. The families, the wife said, oh yeah, by the way, she told us she was taking a ship to Tahiti. We called. No ship ever reported picking anybody up from Floriana, taking them to Tahiti. So all we know is that the Baroness took only what she was wearing that day to Tahiti. All of her things were left at her house to be shared evenly amongst the 2 wives that remained. So I don't know. Floriana, Island of Mystery. Then remember the first family, the Ritters? What was the name of the wife?
Dora.
Good. The name of the husband? That was like 3 minutes ago, guys. Frederick, yeah? Dora had it. Dora said, Frederick, I don't like Galapagos anymore. I want to go to Germany. Do you know what Frederick said? Dora, the only way you're going to go to Germany is in a casket. When you die. You have to stay here with me. Or you can go when I die. But remember, I'm living to be 200 years old. And Dora was forced to stay in Galapagos. That broke her because when she was free to go to Germany, she actually ended up in a mental hospital in Germany. The experience for her was too much. And she wrote a book, When Satan Came to Eden. Satan was the Baroness, by the way. In case you're missing that. Have you ever heard that name? No, the book. That was made into a movie about 12 years ago. Go home, Google it. The movie is called When Satan Came to Eden, the Galapagos Love Affair. Right? And the lady who does the Baroness, the voice of the Baroness, is Kate Blanchett. You may have heard. She's very well known. So, movie, When Satan Came to Eden, the Galapagos Love Affair. Then we have the other family. Remember the Whitmers. Heinz was the father. What was the name of the mother? Margaret. What was the name of the stepson?
Rolf.
The boy, the teenage boy? There's no lunch if you don't answer. I'm going to be eating a lot today. Harry. How about the baby? Rolf and the daughter Floriana. Heinz also died, and so did Harry. The only ones who survived were Margaret and the 2 kids. The police came again and said, Margaret, what's going on? Why do people keep dying in Floriana? Margaret always said, I don't know. We Ecuadorians never tell the police everything. You know why? Because we don't know if they're in on it. You probably have heard there's a lot of corruption in the military, in the police. That happens here. I'm glad you don't have to live with that in your countries. Not like you have president-elects being convicted, or former prime ministers who get kicked out for having secret COVID parties. You know, you're glad you don't have to live with that reality. So we always suspect that Margaret knew more than what she told the police. We always saw ships on Floriana that didn't belong to either of the families there. So we suspected there may have been other people on Floriana. We don't know. They're very secretive, yeah? Margaret, before she died, that's how she ended up. She said, at the end, she always said, now that I'm ready to go, now that I'm ready to go. We saw her about 2 weeks before she died. And you know what? There were things I did not tell the police. But now that I'm ready to go, I will write a letter. And I will leave the letter with Floriana. And then she can make it public. 2 weeks later, she died. No letter was found. A, she forgot to write the letter. B, the daughter did not like what her mother wrote in that letter. But she always said, now that I'm ready to go, I'll say everything I didn't say back then. Who knows? Still a mystery. And here's a little clip of the video I was telling you about, yeah?
Wherever you go, you bring yourself.
Dora and I are turning our backs on civilization. We have set our hopes on the Galápagos.
Why would people leave civilized world come out to a rock?
Neither of us could have imagined the strange and sinister drama that would be unleashed upon us all.
Floriana is just one mystery on top of another.
Our letters home to Germany have been leaked. Friedrich and I have been made to look like a pair of eccentrics escaped from some psychological zoo.
While reading his words, I realized that the Galapagos is our solution. If the Ritters could do it, so could we.
I am highly resentful. We shall resist the establishment of any community.
There is now a baroness with several husbands and a machine gun.
I've come to establish a grand hotel. After all, woman is capable of everything.
I think she might have dreams of being a feudal queen.
I am disgusted by her theatricals.
We are appalled.
We consider them intruders.
It was a war.
All at once, a long shriek gashed the silence. Everyone seems to have disappeared without a trace. I nearly screamed at the sight before my eyes.
I curse you with my dying breath.
The rest of the movie you're going to have to watch at home, make some popcorn, yeah? Galapagos was a mess. We owned Galapagos, we had no control over it. People did whatever they wanted, right? People, started pulling other people's teeth off. Ecuador said, finally, enough. We need to control Galapagos. We need to know what's going on. So we declared Galapagos a national park, 1959. From then onwards, there's laws and regulations. We also said we cannot have humans everywhere, so we restricted humans to a small percentage of Galapagos. 3% were given to humans, 97% is national park. Humans will never touch that. Yeah? From that 97%, we use part of it, tourism. We use 0.7%. Yeah? And you've seen how responsible tourism is done in Galapagos. Even if tourism damages every site we visit, that is less than 1%. And by doing that, we make enough money, so 96 will never be touched by anything, only by the animals. So we said, so be it. Humans were coming from Ecuador, from other countries to live in Galapagos. So we also had to adjust something. We said, enough. No more humans may come to Galapagos. Only if you're born here. So now, even though we're part of Ecuador, Ecuadorians may not come to Galapagos anymore. They can come to visit, but they cannot stay. In order for a person to stay in Galapagos and live here, you have to be born or marry somebody from Galapagos. Yeah? If you have any daughters or granddaughters, no, seriously. No, I'm serious. And I have a motorcycle too. Sometimes that helps. So that was the only way to stop the population from growing. Because imagine if 50,000 Ecuadorians move to Galapagos, 100,000 people, we will have to give them maybe a new island or open national park areas. Because the Constitution of Ecuador says that for an X number of people, you need an X number of roads, an X number of schools, houses, etc., etc. So we said we will never give more than 3% to humans in Galapagos. Friends, that is what I had to share with you about the history of Galapagos. If they ask in the dining room, I finished 1 minute ago. Thank you very much. Lunch is ready.